Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our special guest, Tom Ruwitch. And today we're going to be talking about why storytellers sell more and have more fun doing it. Tom is a consultant, content marketing expert, and founder of Story Power Marketing. He is a digital marketing pioneer who founded the email networking software and services company SmartVolt in 2001, before most business people had even heard of email marketing. Today, coaches, consultants, and other experts hire Tom to power up their stories because most dish out the same old boring content that turns off prospects, and then they feel frustrated and stuck. So Tom helps them transform content from the boring to brilliant and turn marketing from frustrating to fun and convert results from pitiful to profitable. Oh my gosh, I love that. Welcome, Tom. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Well, I have to say, I love that, from pitiful to profitable. And so for all of you who are joining us for the very first time, this is going to be such a great episode. And while you are listening and tuning in, take this moment right now to subscribe to Claim Your Career Crown wherever you get your podcasts. And if you love the show and you love what we're doing, please leave us a 5-star review. We'd very much appreciate it. So pitiful to profitable. Tom, I have to ask you, what inspired you to get started in the current reincarnation of what you're doing, from the email marketing to storytelling?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lynn. You mentioned in my bio that I was doing email marketing. I started my email marketing company back in 2001, when most people had not even heard of email marketing. And so when we began to roll clients in, they would say things like, great, now we have the software to create and deliver and track email campaigns. Where do we buy the list? Sell me a list. We'd say, no, we're not going to sell you a list. You're going to build a list. They'd say, build a list? Well, how do I build a list? And so we began to not just provide the software for doing email marketing, but we built an agency around that software company that helped our clients build lists.
Yeah.
Create landing pages, websites, lead gen strategies, all that stuff. And we ran MarketVault for 19 years. So I spent a lot of time diving deep with business people on all things marketing. And the thing that I came to realize as the years went on and on and on is that most business people, small business, big business, business to consumer, business to business, they are chasing the shiny object squirrels, the latest and greatest tools, the latest shiny object tactics. So they're focused on, give me a better funnel system, or teach me to create a better funnel. And when things don't go well in their marketing, and for a lot of business people, they feel stuck, they feel lost. And when it's not going well, they blame the tool. Oh, my funnel software, my email marketing software, my automation software isn't good enough. And they get a different piece of software. Or they blame the tactic. Oh, the funnel wasn't designed properly. Or they blame the tactician. I need a better funnel creator or advisor for my email marketing. And what they don't think about is, well, wait a minute, what are the stories? What are the messages? What's the content that I'm putting into my email marketing, or that I'm posting on social media, or that I put on my blog on my website, or that I put in the video that I put on YouTube? Most business people think that they know what they want to say and they've got that part right. What they need is the tools and the tactics and all the marketing tricks. It actually is the other way around.
Yeah.
It's the other way around, that most of the business people out there are dishing out boring, same old, blah, blah, blah content. And coaches and consultants and experts and thought leaders are especially guilty of that because they know so much. They are thought leaders. They have great expertise. They have great information, and they want to share it. They want to teach. They want to put it out there. They want to prove how much they know. And yet, sorry, coaches, consultants, experts, thought leaders, most of what you know and say, it's kind of been, been there, done that, read that, seen that, said before. It's commoditized. And if all you do is deliver another blah 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 post or email with some information and tips, you're not going to stand out. What you have to do is deliver information that's entertaining, that has personality, that's story powered. And when you do that, you make the human connections. People connect with you. People like you. People trust you. People choose you, especially if the way you frame the stories reflects what they, as the readers, as your audience, as prospects, are going through. That's a really critical point, that when we talk about storytelling and marketing, a lot of people tend to think that what you're talking about is, oh, I have to come up with some legendary origin story, my me story. How'd I get started? And so they talk about the garage where they invented the widget. And no one cares. No one gives a hoot about you and your legendary origin story, unless the elements of the story that you tell reflect your prospect's story, your prospect's journey. Then they lean in. Then they say, oh, you get me. You understand me. I want to connect with you. I want to hear more. You understand my journey. That's when the bonds get created. That's when the funnels begin to work. That's when the tools and the tactics begin to really pay off, if you get the foundational storytelling, content creation down first.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I always approach it. I mean, I love this approach. It's a sort of a spin on my piece, which is thinking like the client. What do they
Oh yeah.
want, need, or lack? Why does it matter to them? Because this is the same thing. Why does this matter to them? And how does a story engage them in a way that they can put themselves in the story, that you can't get with just plain talk or
Mm-hmm.
plain language? You need to draw them in, and stories are a great way to do that. And I am really curious, when you work with clients, how do you start this? I mean, do you have a specific process you go with them? How do you pull the stories out?
Yeah, yeah. I like to share a quote from a guy named Eugene Schwartz. Eugene Schwartz was probably the most prolific and successful copywriter of his day in the 60s, 70s, into the 80s. He was a madman. He was, a guy writing ads, direct response sales letters and so forth, and advertisements. And Eugene Schwartz never suffered from writer's block. Hundreds of ads, maybe thousands. He certainly wrote hundreds of thousands of words day after day after day, never suffered from writer's block. and when people would ask him about the writing process, he had a great quote that I really think is a foundational idea for all of us who are creating copy, who are creating content. He said, copy is not written, copy is assembled. I'm going to repeat that because it's so profound and so important. Copy is not written, copy is assembled. And what he meant by that is that don't just sit down, the day that the ad is due or the email needs to be written or the hour that you're going to post on social, in front of a blank sheet of paper, or in our case now in 2022, in front of a blank computer screen, and think, okay, I'm gonna create now. It's creation time. It's writing time. Once upon a time. Now what? It just doesn't work that way. You'll get stuck. You've probably felt that if you've tried to create content on a consistent basis. So what Schwartz was talking about, and the method that he applied and that I've adopted and that I apply and teach for my clients, is story is an act of, or story creation, storytelling begins with the act of discovering the story and gathering the building blocks. So where we begin, Lynn, is by teaching our clients how to discover the stories. And by discover the stories, what we're really talking about is discovering the prospect stories. What makes them tick? What's keeping them up at night? What's frustrating them? What do they feel? What do they crave? What do they covet? And then where do they want to go? Where envision that future? And we have a method at Story Power Marketing, the 3E method, where the first E is empathize. That's what we're talking about. Put yourself in your prospect's shoes, feel what they're feeling, understand their emotions. Where are they? What's keeping them stuck? What's bugging them? That's all about empathy. But then we're not about just wallowing in our misery. It's not about, just fear for fear's sake. It's about solution building. So we have to envision what's on the other side of the mountain, or the top of the mountain, however you want to make the metaphor. Let's envision where they can go. And at that point, you're really talking about the outcomes that they wish to achieve. You're still focusing on them and their journeys, the outcome that they wish to achieve. So empathize, envision, and then the third E is enable. Well, what we mean by enable is the product and service that we deliver becomes the bridge from where they are to where they want to be. Yeah. And if you can discover where they are, where they want to be, you now have the building blocks that you need to assemble a story where the key, the takeaway is, oh, I can enable that journey. Because there's nothing better for you as a marketer than sharing a story, painting a picture where the prospect says, oh, I can relate. Yeah, that's meaningful to me. I want to take that journey. If you can build and deliver that story, well, the thing that goes through their minds is, well, how are we going to do that? How am I going to take that journey? And now you've been invited, or if it's in a written piece, their heart and their mind has been opened to hear the solution. They're inviting it in. And so, you're a sales consultant and teacher and expert, and there's nothing better than being the welcome guest as opposed to the unwanted pest. We all hate to pitch. Pitching and prodding, it's painful. And so when prospects can relate to the stories that you're putting out there and are feeling like, how do you do it? Well, now you're no longer pitching and prodding. You're no longer the unwelcome guest, or the pitchy, you're no longer the pitchy pest. You are the invited welcome guest, where when you talk about your products and services, they're thinking, they're already fired up. They want to buy. And it just completely changes the sales dynamic when you do this well.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying, and that whole concept of the 3 E's and how you can use that to build the content that you need to create. And it's really staying in touch with, what is going on with your client, get out of your own way. And certainly in sales, I encounter that a great deal. And to your point earlier, the shiny object, I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, gosh. Yes. And it's like, oh, well, should I be doing this? And it's like, okay, we have a strategic plan and we've only begun to execute on it. No. And of course, sometimes you want to stop and say, all right, let's pause for a moment. Is this truly going to serve this? Is this the right time? And there are times that you do need to take a hard left or a hard right. It's that good of an opportunity.
Sure.
But many times it is just a distraction, and getting our message through to people when they are bombarded with messaging, constantly bombarded. They also need to hear things a couple of different ways and multiple times, so that it will make the connection. And I'm really curious about that as well. So with your process of creating the story, is that something that, okay, you can repurpose that story and how it's delivered so that you can meet people at different stages and at different media formats?
Well, yeah. And so there are really two elements to this question. You can repurpose stories, but I'm going to put that aside for a moment.
Okay.
There are absolutely stories that I've told the same fundamental story that I've told multiple times, and my audience doesn't get tired of it. But let me put that aside for a moment, because what I want to do is take it down to the idea, the lesson, the point that you're trying to make, because all of us as experts have ideas or points or lessons that we wish to deliver to our audience. The financial planner wants to write a post about should you convert your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, or the business consultant wants to teach you a little bit about the importance of delegation, and so and I want to teach about different ideas that, you know, keep your instilling humor in your content, things like that. Okay, so you have the idea, and you are planning to share that idea with your audience because it's important for them to achieve whatever journey they're hoping to take. The business, well, I'll use that one about delegation. Let's go there. I have worked with an executive coach who works with business owners, and really what she sells is helping business owners get off the hamster wheel, stop feeling like the weight of the world is on their shoulders, that they're constantly in motion, that they have a job even though they own the business. So that's what it is she does. One of the things she wants to teach is delegation. And before she hired me, before she began working with me, she had written a blog post about delegation. And it went something like this: delegation is one of the most important skills that a business leader can develop. When you delegate properly, you involve your employees, and and it's not a top-down organization. And blah 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 blah. Google delegation tips, and you'll find 5,000 articles about that. And when she posted that article, there was nothing about it that made her stand out from the other business coaches who were out there. When she began to work with me, we began to look for the stories. We began to figure out ways to, well, how can you teach the points and share the ideas that you wish to share, but do it in a way that's entertaining and captivating. And one of the stories that we dug up is the fact that she worked with a business owner who, in 20 years of owning the business, get this, 20 years owning a business, had never taken a vacation longer than a long weekend. Wow is right. And the guy had the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was afraid that if he left, the place would fall down, all of these things. And so she worked with him. How could she delegate? How could she prepare her employees, not just dump tasks on them, but teach them to really hold the place up? And after she worked with him, he was able to go away. He went on a vacation. He had the time of his life. And when he returned, the company was operating better. Morale was up. Everything had gone well. Everybody was fired up. He felt better. He began to leave work earlier and go home at a reasonable hour and enjoy his family. What a story that is. And the moral of the story, so really, and what happened is, on her blog and in her email, she wrote this story where the headline was something like "How a Stressed Out Owner Let Go and Got Away." Okay. Think about the 3 E's: empathize, envision, enable. Yeah. That headline alone, how a stressed out, empathize. You're stressed out. You can't let go. You feel stuck. Envision, get away. Feel less stress, escape. Okay, that headline alone, with the picture that went with the post in the email, a man on a hammock on a sunset beach, awesome picture. That alone is the story that any stressed out owner might relate to. Ooh, I'm going to read that. And then on went the story, and everybody could relate to that idea of, I can't get away. I don't want to get away. And if they can't relate, they're probably not her prospect.
Yeah.
But if they can relate, they are. And what's the enable piece? The enable is, I enabled this journey by teaching him how to delegate. And here are 5 tips how to delegate more effectively. Well, by the time you get to the 5 tips, you're you're buying what she's selling, you're reading the post, and you're getting to the bottom where it says, if you want to learn how to delegate more effectively, call me and we'll schedule a strategy session and you can become a client. They're reading to the bottom and they're buying because they're down with the journey. They're fired up with the journey. Now, back to your question about telling stories over and over again. Imagine that some months pass, she's been writing emails, she's been putting out her blog, and now it's time to write another one. And she thinks, wow, I've sort of run through my cycle of tips and ideas and things that are important to me to share. It's time to write about delegation again. If all she does is write the blah, blah, blah lecture, how do you redo that again? Do you do it like, instead of delegation is one of the most important skills that a business leader could do. How do you do that a second time? Maybe you say delegation is one of the most not important. I'll say critical. It's one of the most critical things. Well, no, you can only say it once if you blah 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 lecture at your audience. But there are infinite numbers of stories and entertaining hooks that she can use to make points about delegation and about flattening an organization. So if you go through my emails and my blog, you're going to see that there are themes and there are ideas, and they're constantly repeating themselves, but they always feel fresh because I'm delivering them in an entertaining and engaging way, always with a different story. Or back to the first point, sometimes I'll take a story I've told before, going fishing with my son, and I'll tell the same story, but I'll use it to demonstrate a different point.
Yeah.
There again, no reader has ever said to me, "Oh, Tom, I heard that story before." How, it just doesn't happen. They read it again, and I actually did that with this story about the time I went fishing with my son, whom I taught how to fish. And then, like, less than 10 years later, we go fishing and he catches 42 trout in one afternoon and I catch 2. And very humbling. And I've told that story for a number of different business lessons that I draw from that story. And I wrote that recently in an email, and I had somebody write me back and say, "Oh, I always love it when you share the Tom fishing with Jacob story." I love it when you tell the same story. When was the last time you, dear listener or viewer, got an email from somebody saying that to you? You can do the same. You can have the same reaction. Engaged audience, fired up, reading to the bottom, scheduling the appointment with you, all those awesome things.
Yeah. One, of course, the fishing story, you could also tell it as a video. You could post it as a video. You could create a cartoon infographic about the fishing. There are a number of different ways that you can share that or repurpose it, which was sort of where I was going with that, because I thought about it because there's a few stories that I have. I know you've heard my pizza ninja story.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of different ways. I can actually see that in like a cartoon strip, an artist doing that could be quite funny.
Yeah.
And so, but to your point, that was what I was really looking at. And I think that one of the things that I'm curious about, because as I'm listening to you, I'm just going, oh my gosh, I'm going to listen to this episode again. But what are things that you encounter with the clients that you work with that can hold them back? Like they'll go, well, sometimes when I'm in a group and I hear all these different things, especially when it's like all the challenges that they've had to overcome. And I mean, just some like, wow, and I'm going like, man, I've had a charmed life, great childhood, fabulous parents, great extended family.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like, I'm going like, whoa, and not that you have to pull from the negative to tell a story. But sometimes when I'm listening to those things, I have to really think about it so that I can pull something forward. And I know I was doing that once when I was trying to create I created a story about my brother and I, and how when we went snow skiing, he was like a go for it kind of guy. I mean, he would
Uh-huh.
take me to the most challenging slopes. He was a way better skier than I was. And he'd just say, okay, let's go. And I'd be looking down at this thing and going like, I'm about to go off a cliff. But you know what? I would go for it. So I was a
Yeah.
go for it type of person. And I use that to say, sometimes you have to take that leap to be able
Yeah.
to move forward, to go outside of your comfort zone. But I'm curious for people who are afraid to take the leap and are like, well, my life is boring. Don't have any great stories. How do you help them?
Yeah, yeah, and so you put your finger on one of the most common objections. I have no stories. I'm boring. My all these exciting and interesting stories that I read, I got nothing. And so I have two responses to that. Number one is, oh, we all have good stories. We're gonna find the stories. Don't worry. And you have stories about yourself within you. We're going to find them. But number two, don't worry about that yet. And then I go back to something I talked about earlier. It doesn't have to be a story about you. It
Right.
doesn't have to be some extraordinary, oh, I was born in a
Oh,
holler in the Appalachian wilds of Western Kentucky, and I clawed my way out of the ditch. And, then here's the garage where I invented the widget with Steve Jobs and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do that, although you have ultimately interesting stories from your own life that you can draw. I cited one. I went fishing with my son. He kicked my butt. It was humiliating and embarrassing. But when I asked him what he does, what's the thing that allows him to do that, his answer was, well, Dad, I put my fly on the water. And when he said it, I was like, what's he talking about? And then I realized that, while I'm, fumbling and changing flies and staring at the clouds and taking a lunch break, he is all action focused. He always has his fly on the water. And I turn that into a metaphor that, you need in business to have a bias for action, not analysis paralysis and constantly just futzing around.
yeah.
And so just a little thing, you begin to, when you're trained and practiced at this, you begin to find the stories in your life. But again, back to that first point, it doesn't have to be about you. It can be
No.
about anything, as long as it's going to be meaningful and relevant to the prospects. So the email that I wrote this morning, I'm preparing for a trip to Europe. My wife and I are going to France. We're going to have a layover for 8 hours in Frankfurt, Germany on Saturday. So last night I was doing research about guide services. Want to take a quick private guided tour around the city of Frankfurt, then head back to the airport, fly to France. And I stumbled across a review of this one guide company where the person who was reviewing complained, rightly so, that their local guide in Frankfurt, Germany didn't know German, couldn't speak or read German, and also had never been to any of the attractions that they were guiding him around to. And the company responded to the negative review by deflecting and denying. And they didn't deny that the guy didn't know English, but they just sort of said, oh, well, that's, having a guide who knows the language. It was kind of unbelievable. And I turned it into an email about the fact that, hey, if you screw up, own it and apologize and put yourself in the prospect or the customer's shoes and acknowledge how they're feeling and that they're right. And you don't have to argue with customers. And that's just a business idea that's pretty fundamental. And if I had just done an email kind of lecturing people about, hey, the old adage of the customer is always right is whatever. I could have done a lecture. No one would have read it. I've gotten tons of replies from people who are like, oh my God, what a funny, crazy story. I can't believe a tour company is sending out a tour guide who doesn't even know the local language. And people love the story. I wrote that story at about 7 a.m. this morning after last night sitting on my laptop right before I went to bed doing the research. And I didn't, at the moment that I experienced that, think, okay, here's a story I'm going to write an email about tomorrow morning. I woke up this morning, and I do this as a practice to sort of challenge myself. I woke up this morning not knowing exactly what I was going to write. And I thought, oh, that thing with that tour guide last night, that's kind of funny. I'm going to tell that story. And again, it's not something I don't recommend that all of you just start waking up in the morning and try to dream up stories on the fly. There's a lot of foundational work that went into preparing me to be able to do that. I have the building blocks from story discovery and from building habits and all these things that I teach in my programs and that I'm practiced at doing. But the real importance of what I just shared is that you don't have to constantly just be drawing from some incredible epic history of yourself. That's not going to be the source, but you can be a first person character in your stories. I was a first person character in this story. I was doing research with my wife. People know my wife by name in my emails. So they get to know me. They get to know how I'm feeling. They get to know the fact that I was rolling my eyes and shaking my head as I read that review. But it's not really a story about me, or at least about my history. It just is something that I witnessed, something that I thought was interesting and funny and worth sharing. And that is entertaining. And I got a ton of replies from people who read the email. And before I wrote emails this way, and well, by the way, Lynn, you're right. It doesn't have to be an email. It could be a video. It could be a social post. Before I began to communicate this way, nobody would ever reply and say, oh, I was so entertained by that boring lecture that you shared in your email, or that tip that was in your newsletter. But this is more about a personal bond building, relationship building communication that you establish. And when you do that, people are more likely to choose you.
Yes. Well, I have to tell you, I mean, my next question, of course, is what should listeners do next? And yet I'm sitting here going like, well, the first thing I need to do is, as I write my newsletter, for the next week, I need to tell a story. I need to make it more interesting. I need to do something that engages them so they'll hit reply.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But what advice do you have for somebody who's just like me? I'm leaning in going, okay, what do I do next? What do I need to do a better job?
Well, the the easy and best advice is contact me and I'll teach you how to do it. I'd be a poor salesperson if I didn't say that, right, Lynn? But
Oh, yeah.
no, I mean, the place to get started is to begin to really focus on thinking about those questions that I was raising before. What makes your prospects tick? Why is it that they are stuck? Where is it that they want to go? What is the journey that you are enabling? And really begin to dive deep. Now, I say that, but I want to note the fact that most people, when they try to go through this exercise, they start by pulling from their head what they think they know, which is a great place to start. You know a lot about your prospects and customers, and pulling from your head what you think they're all about is a great place to start, but it's a lousy place to finish. Too many of the marketing people out there, the people who run you through exercises about prospect personas or whatever it may be, they hand you a one-page worksheet. They say, fill out the worksheet about your prospect, pull from your head what you think you know, and boom, you're done. You've got your prospect persona. You've discovered the story. Well, we have this process that I call story discovery, where we teach 3 pillars of story discovery: pulling from your head what you think you know, then developing habits and systems to consistently collect, sort, sift, and distill the things that your prospects and customers are actually saying. So you're recording Zoom calls, you have email communications, you have reviews, you have surveys. There are all sorts of, you have so much more than you know in your treasure chest. The question is, are you being habitual about collecting it? And then once you collect it, are you putting it in a place where you can find it? Are you sorting? Are you sifting? Are you then recognizing, oh, wow, this is a really valuable piece that helps me understand the story, that helps me empathize with my clients? So that second pillar is that we teach is how to really dig deep and collect that stuff that are straight from the mouths of your prospects and customers. And then the third pillar is, what are the people in your market whom you don't know directly, the ones who are not in your solar system, the ones who are not in your direct solar system, but are in the universe of your market? What are they saying? And so there are all sorts of places and all sorts of ways to discover that. It might be book reviews of your competitors' books, blog posts, online communities, all sorts of places that we can teach you where to go. And the stories that I tell, the things that I teach, are instructed not just from what I pulled from my head. If I had stopped there, I would have a very incomplete story. It's all three pieces. And so the question you asked is where to start. Start by beginning to think about your prospects, put yourself in their shoes, think about empathy, think about envisioning, think about enable, but then also be prepared to learn how to dive deeper, how to really get the whole story. And this brings us back to what I said about Eugene Schwartz. You know, the thing that made Eugene Schwartz so great and that makes the best storytellers so great is they gathered more building blocks. They went deeper. And so when it was time to assemble content, it wasn't some act of magic. They weren't conjuring a muse. They weren't summoning the creative unicorn within. They were methodically assembling, plot, 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 assembling the story. And to assemble the story, you have to gather the building blocks. That is the foundational thing. That's where you have to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I concur. And I love the story, especially about the persona, and where people just think that they can just spend an hour on it or something and they're good to go. And
Yeah.
I know from our own work with our clients with developing their sales strategy, that is one of the what we have 4 pillars. That is one of the core pillars. And it is not, you don't even begin to scratch the surface in an hour
That's
of
right.
what goes into actually putting that together, and a lot of research and discussions. And as your point, reaching out and connecting with past clients, current clients, and the ones that got away is a great way. And I have seen so many times where a client, their perception of why people buy from them, and then after going through in this exercise, and we interview 7 to 10 people, and they are miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are, happy, satisfied clients, but the reason they bought was completely different than the perception that the company has.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Going back to current clients, past clients, so on and so forth, and digging deep. I want to emphasize though that while on one hand we are talking about, yeah, you have to put in the work, you have to dig deep, you have to gather more than your competitor if you want to stand out. You have more right at your fingertips than you imagine. Yeah. One time with a client of mine, I suggested to her that she pull together as many emails. I asked her to find the first email exchange that you had with any prospects who either hired you or didn't hire you, and share those with me. and took her a little while to pull those out. That speaks to the idea that she was not in the habit of organizing those things, but they had come in, and if you're in the habit of organizing them, they could have all been in a folder ready for her to find in just a moment. So it took her a while to find them, but once she found them, we actually dug in and found a little bit of copy in just one of those emails that verbatim became the lead copy of her website. A prospect describing what she was feeling, what she needed, the transformation she was seeking. That's why she was reaching out for help. This is what I'm going through, she was saying. And some of the wording and the language from that just perfectly captured what this business coach was bringing to the marketplace. And it became the foundational story on the top of her website, and it was sitting at her fingertips right there. And I love that story because on one hand, yeah, she dug, but there's gold at your feet if you know how to go about finding it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Well, Tom, thank you so much for sharing why storytellers sell more and have more fun doing it. I can
we
tell
had fun, right? Didn't it seem I was having fun telling those stories?
And I was having fun listening. And I am so excited. I know that our listeners are going to want to know more about you and where they can find you.
Yeah, well, the best place to find me is at storypowermarketing.com. That's story and power and marketing, all one word, no dashes, nothing separating it, all mushed together. Storypowermarketing.com is my website. And if the first time you visit the website, a page will pop up that invites you to join my email list. And if you want to get a feel for how it's done with email storytelling, sign up for my list. And the best thing that you can do for me is learn and enjoy and interact with my emails, and then ask questions, reply back. You'll also find free resources on the website. There are all sorts of paths you can go down. And so just go to the website, sign up for the email list, and coming soon are going to be some additional resources and free offers that you'll be able to avail yourselves of if you join the email list. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect there.
Yeah, and I'm on the list. So this has been such an informative discussion. And for everyone who tuned in today, thank you so much. And if you have any ideas that you'd like to share, we love hearing from you. You can leave us a comment down below. If you have a specific question or would like to suggest a topic for discussion, please email us at jointheconversation@petitetoqueen.com. And to stay current on all of our insightful advice, our breakthrough advantages, incredible episodes like the one today with Tom, you can sign up for our weekly wisdoms at petitetoqueen.com, and you won't miss a single episode of Claim Your Career Crown. I want to thank everyone again for tuning in. And Tom, thank you so much for this incredibly great discussion today.
Thank you, Lynn. It was fun.